Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's pensions fund meeting. Do we have any apologies of absence?
Looks like T9 going, staff member and the union rep, they're not here.
Okay. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. I guess the panelists have, does anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting held in December? No.
Okay. Pleasure.
And at this meeting, we're going through the audit plan for 2021, and we've got Suresh Patel from Ernst & Young. So I'll hand over to Suresh to present on how they're going to carry out the audit for this year.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening to everybody. So this is the audit plan for the 2020-21 pension fund accounts. And in front of you, I think it starts on page 7 of your pack. We've got the outlined audit plan. I thought it'd be easier just to take you through the overview part of the plan, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So if I start on page 11, that's where we kind of summarise what we consider to be our key audit risks and then areas of focus. You'll see there highlighted in yellow that the first two, so the main risk around what we call fraud or error around posting of investment journals is no change in the prior year. So that tends to be a focus of all our pension fund audits, given the nature of how the investment journals work on pension funds. And obviously that'll be then the focus of our attention when we come to the year-end audit and looking at those journals being posted around investment valuations. The area of focus then is the main first one is about going concern. So we've obviously had that in the plan from the prior year. And we think that remains what we call an inherent risk, just in terms of the assessment that the fund needs to make as a matter of course, and then any kind of specific disclosures in the accounts. There has been a change in the auditing standard around going concern, which does require even more challenge from auditors on assertions. But I think from a pension fund perspective, it's probably no real change from the questions that we were posing in the prior year. And then the only other, I suppose, the new area or potential, as we've reflected there, is just in respect of the valuation of private debt and infrastructure. This is where the year-end position in your draft account is often based on either some sort of fund account or other information, which is then tends to be updated after the year end. So clearly, inherently, these assets are harder to value, and that kind of update process obviously creates a potential risk that the draft accounts could be materially misstated. Hence the reason why it's an area of audit focus. But we'll clearly keep that under review as we understand more about the private debt and infrastructure assets that you hold. Bottom of that page, it's important to highlight what the levels of materiality that we work to. So the overall one of 6.9 million, and then the differences threshold, which is what we report then back to this committee, as well as standards and general purposes of just under 400,000. Over the page, then, just I suppose 2 more things to highlight. We talked there about the timeline. It's tied in more to the council's accounts, but in terms of when you are required to issue or publish your draft accounts, MHCLG recently consulted on changing that to the 1st of August. It then didn't really talk about what that would mean for publishing audited accounts, and that still remains at the end of, we expect that to be end of September. Interesting enough, on the consultation, I think most audit firms like EY have responded to say we don't think that's realistic from a national perspective. But you'll see later on in section 5 of the plan, we are planning to carry out the audit of the pension fund as well as the council to enable us to issue your audit report by the end of September. But we did want to highlight the kind of national context on that. And then finally on fees, which again, I suppose is another kind of national kind of context, just to sort of remind you that we are still in discussions with public sector audit appointments about increases to the scale fee. And in section 7, I've just highlighted our view on this year's fees, where we've got additional areas of work and what potential fees could be in those areas. I'll stop there, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Suresh, for your presentation. Does anybody have any questions to ask?
Suresh, thank you for the audit plan. Just 2 questions. So you obviously mentioned around the extra work on going concern. Has that been driven by ISA 570 in respect of, obviously, auditors need to do more work? And just your thoughts on ISA 540, which is around accounting estimates, where I presume the sort of pension funds got properties and etc. What extra work or are we expected us to sort of get comfort over those balances?
Thank you for those 2 questions. So in terms of the going concern, the additional procedures are driven somewhat by the revised auditing standard 570, as you say, on going concern, but it's also driven clearly by the current environment in terms of the fund operates in and its admitted and scheduled bodies. In respect of accounting estimates and the revised auditing standard around those, I think for the pension fund, we're probably less. We're probably going to see less of an impact of that change than we will do on the council, just in terms of how the fund derives those estimates, like you say, in terms of things like property or infrastructure type of assets. But that's tied into the risk around level 3 investment. So there will be obviously a focus on that, but I personally don't think there'll be a significant amount of additional work on that as an accounting estimate for the pension fund audit.
Questions from anyone else? Okay. Right. Thank you, Suresh, for your presentation. If no one else has any questions, we move on to the next agenda item. You're welcome to stay on to the end if you wish, but you can leave at this point. Thank you. And the next agenda item is the quarterly performance review, which Roger Kershaw is going to present, which is a good news story, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just really, this is just a brief summary of performance to getting the funds to value.
Sorry, Roger, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Can you not hear me? All right, just give me a second. Sometimes it's happening. Put my headphones on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so pleasingly, the fund continues to increase in value. It's increased this quarter by some 67.6 million to 884 million, which is a sizable growth, primarily due to the increase in equities, where we remain overweight while we're trying to move towards our revised strategy following the initial review, and of course following the fine-tuning we did after the last triennial valuation. So total assets have returned during the same quarter 8.2% compared to the target of 1.2%, again, which is a significant outperformance by some 7%. And over the last 12 months, the fund performance was some 12.2%, and a 3-year annualized performance is 8.2%. So the annual performance target is 4.8. So in every measure, we are exceeding our targets, which is a pleasing result for members to note. There's a lot more detail in the other sections, but I shall leave it there, Chair, and invite any questions that any members may have.
Right. Thank you, Roger, for your question, your presentation. Does anyone have any questions on this? Councillor Bush.
Thanks, Roger, for that. Is this bump sort of mainly down to sort of market stabilizing now following COVID? Or is it due to our sort of excellent investments?
Oh, I'm sure there's a bit of both there,
Yeah.
Councillor Bush, but I mean, Annika will be able to tell us about sort of the market performance, but I've noticed that the markets remain quite buoyant despite some of the concerns around COVID and obviously the lockdown and the impact that it's had. So it's a good strategic position for us. So we've not been materially affected by those investments whereby those industries have been particularly affected. But the market just remains fairly buoyant in the areas that we happen to be invested with. Annika, have you got any sort of other more detailed answers for Councillor Bush?
No, I think I'll just echo what you said, Roger. Yes, it was another very buoyant equity market performance, but in general, if you see the split of assets across all the different categories that we are invested in, you know, developed equities, of course, has done very, very well. But if you also see investments such as emerging market, infrastructure, each of them, especially the active management that has been, the value that has been added by the EM manager is quite notable. However, that volatility has also been kept, volatility continues to be high. So for example, the volatility measure, which is typically used in the US market, is above 20. And to give you an example of where it was in 17, 18, it was around 10. So it's still double of what the volatility has been. So keeping that in mind, the portfolio is still very, very diversified. And that is kind of should give the committee some comfort that in case of there's a drawdown, then the portfolio will be somewhat protected from that drawdown position.
Thank you. Right. Any more questions from anybody? No?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Roger, for that. Helpful. So agenda item 6 is Nimasha will introduce the item on Fund Global Custodian Northern Trust. Paul Wells will give a presentation for about 20 minutes, I understand. So.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Today we invited Northern Trust, our custodian. We appointed Northern Trust last December, and now we got a global custodian, not like in the past. We had custodian looking after only some part of the portfolio. They will be looking at the whole portfolio. What does this mean more accurate reporting and giving more confidence to the auditors, and also helping Aniket and the team on the performance or the investment side if they want to check anything against the fund manager. So I will hand over to Paul Webb, who is from Northern Trust and my relationship manager at Northern Trust, and he will talk us to what is the role of the custodian and how best they will work with Merton Pension Fund.
Thank you, Nimasha. Thank you, Chair. I assume everyone can hear me.
You want me to share your presentation?
Nods all around. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please, Nimasha. Thank you.
Okay, give me a second before I write. I need to figure out how did I forgot. Okay, share screen. Give me a second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
There we
Right.
go.
Okay. Just tell me which I'm going to the. You
Just
happy
to
with
the next one.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Can you? I can see sort of 2/3 of the screen at the moment, top to bottom. If you can just reduce it a little bit.
Was too small. Better?
That should be that okay, I think.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the slides on my own screen here. So
Yeah, hold on a second if I do. Is it better? There's the presentation view.
Yes.
I can see a few nods.
Yeah. Okay.
Or we have the slides too, so
yeah,
we can follow them that way or on the screen if personal preference.
Okay.
Good stuff. So thank you everybody for allowing me to present to you during your meeting. I thought it'd probably be interesting just to start with a view of Northern Trust as a whole. You know, unlike some custodians in the market, Northern Trust might not be a household name, in the UK. We are without doubt a household name in the US, which is why you will see probably slightly irritating dollar signs on the screen here. I'm afraid, being a US bank, our materials tend to be focused on dollars. But I thought I'd just give you some scale as to what Northern Trust is all about. Globally, we have relationships with over 2,400 custody clients, so we're providing the service that I'll outline to you a little bit more globally, and and en masse. We have over $8.5 trillion worth of assets under custody, which I think at the last exchange rate is something like 6.5 to 7 trillion sterling. And we operate across 26 different locations. Our core business as a whole unit is broken down into 3 sections. Asset servicing, which is where the custody role sits. Asset management, which is more aligned with what your managers are performing for you. Northern Trust are also in the same business in terms of asset management, and then wealth management as well. Now, I'll obviously focus on asset servicing today. You can see on the right hand side there, we've got a list of our clients, and you'll be satisfied to see that pension funds is within that list. So Namasha, if you can just go to the next slide, please.
Yep.
Thank you. So the observant amongst you will see that there's a rather large TV screen behind me, which is where my 10-year-old boy would normally be playing his PlayStation at 6 o'clock on an evening. So he was very disappointed when I said to him that I had to do a presentation to stop him doing his usual gaming. And he's very astute, and he said to me, "Okay, what is it all about?" And I said, "Well, I've got to explain to people that what we do." And being observant again and very inquisitive, he said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, we keep assets under custody." And he said, "Well, custody like the police?" I said, "Well, not exactly, no." But it made me think, well, I wonder actually what the sort of the definition of custody means. So the 3 that I've got on the screen here are the role of the custodian, the global custodian, as we're talking about this evening. But actually there are, as you'd expect, some commonalities between the global custodian role and custody in the police sense. Interestingly, the definition that I found about police custody is when you are legally responsible for another person, they are in your custody. When someone is in your custody, it is not just they that reside with you, it is you. It is that you are responsible for taking good care of them. And I think that's the key piece. So the taking care of aspect, the safekeeping, and as the first definition says there, we are, as a custodian, we are responsible for the safekeeping of the securities and the assets that our customers, our clients, such as yourselves, hold. Now, back in the day, many years ago, that would have literally been in physical form, and a custodian would have been responsible for looking after share certificates and the like, and we would have had an enormous vault filled with certificates. These days, obviously, everything is a lot more electronic, and therefore it's more about record keeping, and making sure that everything is reported and valued independently, and that we're acting on your instructions in that sense. So the crucial piece in the middle there is that we do not make decisions. We are just reflecting the decisions that you as our client and that your managers as that delegated function are performing on your behalf. Referring just down to the bottom piece there, the crucial word there is independence. So we are reporting and we are valuing your assets independent to either yourselves as the beneficial owner or the manager as the appointed investment advisor and manager in that sense. So our role is one of independence and of safekeeping. Namasha, we can just click to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as you can see here, what I've done is I've just broken it down into many different types of service that we can provide that really sort of wrap around the general safekeeping. So the safekeeping, as you can see, is kind of front and center there. We're also in, we're responsible for capturing your trading through your manager and the settlement of those trades. And also everything else that revolves around asset servicing. So asset servicing in the broadest sense goes from initial instruction and capturing of the trade that your manager has placed, all the way through to collecting income, sourcing tax reclaims on your behalf, dealing with corporate actions that may happen off the back of those trades and off of your portfolios, class actions, proxy voting, which I know is a huge importance in the LGPS sector, and then, as I referenced earlier, accounting and reporting. So some of the numbers that Mr. Kershaw would have referenced previously, they would have been something that Northern Trust are able to provide in terms of performance reporting. And indeed, the numbers that go to your auditor, they can also come from Northern Trust's records. Such is the need for that independent review. There's also some fringe services, and again, I've highlighted one on the screen there and on your slides. ESG reporting, again, something that we know is hugely important to the LGPS sector, on the basis that if you need to make good, and when I say good, I mean appropriate, I suppose, rather than good versus bad, good investment decisions. How can you do that without knowing how your assets and how your portfolios and how your managers rate from an ESG perspective? We're able to provide some reporting that supports that and helps you with that decision making. I won't go into too much of the other services there, other than to say, these are all things that are designed to support your business model and to support your growth and your decision making across the board. Transition management is probably one other that I'll call out there because of your nature and your relationship with the London CIV, and I can see that Jessica's on the call, so I'll be very careful what I say. But we can support you with your transitions as you look to advance your pooling as your strategies evolve. Okay, Namasha, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, just some stats really around what the custodian has to deal with. So we're processing 25 million trades per annum across our client base, and we're voting in 55 markets. So again, we know that's very important to you as you want to have your voice heard, and again, that kind of plays into the ESG piece where it's very, very important to make sure that you're voting in the way that your members would expect you to vote. There's always quite an interesting trade-off between the performance of your portfolio and the type of assets that you're investing in, and I know that's always a difficult balance. So we're always obviously happy to support that and happy to play a role in your voting.
Sorry.
No, that's fine, Namasha, you can go to the next one. So the next one is an interesting one. So Northern Trust has a unique position in the LGPS sector in that we are custodian for yourselves and for 20 of the other London boroughs. We're also custodian for I think probably 25 more pension funds across the UK, and as well as a relationship that we have with the London CIV, we also have relationships with another 5 of the 8 pools that are across the country. So we're in a unique position in that we sit in the middle in a very, very positive way. The reason for this slide that I put together is really to highlight the connectivity that we have in the overall relationship, but also the independence and the confidentiality which we respect. So in the unique position that we have with a relationship with yourselves, and also with the relationship that we have with London CIV, we will obviously have access to all of that data. The system that yourselves will use to review and to view the data that we hold on your behalf is Northern Trust Passport, which is the same system that the data for the London CIV is held on. Now, I'm in a unique position in that I can see across both of those relationships, but other people within Northern Trust, some of my colleagues, will only have access to what they need to see. So anybody that has a relationship with Merton will only be able to see Merton data. Anybody that has a relationship with London CIV will be able to see the London CIV data, and how your data then folds into the overall London CIV pool. The dotted line down the middle is crucial, because it means that without your express permission, we will not share your data with London CIV, and we will not share their data with you. So we respect that confidentiality. We're in a position where we hope to help. We hope to create efficiencies in the relationship. And I mentioned transition management earlier, and that's a key one where we can add an efficiency, but we won't overstep the mark. We respect that confidentiality, as I've said a couple of times. And we know that we have a role to play independent to the broader relationship that we also enjoy. Okay, Nimasha, if you can go to the next one, please. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't jump too fast. Okay.
That's it, yeah, thank you. So the role that we play is ever evolving, as you would expect. It's a strange one. It never really changes, but it always evolves. And there's always things that we need to be aware of. So there are constant regulatory changes and challenges, indeed, that you would be familiar with. But as your custodian, we try to take that burden from you, and we try to make sure that you are well placed. We try to make sure that through our reporting and through our updates, we are helping you to stay one step ahead of any regulatory changes. Instrument complexity is something that is always challenging, and as your managers start to look at more advanced strategies and more advanced instruments, so we need to obviously be one step ahead of that, and we need to be in a position where we are able to kind of always forward think where the market is going to go and what the expectations there are, the custodian are. And then there's industry demands, which may not be either investment or regulatory driven, but demands such as the cost transparency reporting, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. As your custodian, we are well placed to support that, and we have all the information available to us. And we can do that. We can support London CIV with the reporting that they deliver to you, so that they are meeting their requirements to help you to make the decisions that you need to be making, and to provide the data that you need. Thanks, Nimasha. So this last slide here is just really kind of an overview from a relationship perspective of how we would look after your relationship. So there is a service level description, as it says here, and this is holding us to task. This is keeping us to account and making sure that Nimasha and Gary and the team know that what we are performing and what we are providing is absolutely on time and to the quality that you should expect. We have regular relationship reviews where we go through some of those service level descriptions and the reporting that comes off of the back of that, again, just so that we're all on the same page, that we make sure that we're providing what you need, and we try to stay one step ahead as well. So our role with those relationships is to make sure that we are not only providing you a day-to-day service, but also looking at those industry trends, looking at the regulatory changes, and making sure that you are well informed and that we are here to support you. That's where my role really kicks in from a strategic perspective, and I'm looking ahead to try and make sure that everything that we're delivering is satisfying your needs. We will also then have executive oversight. So because we have such a huge relationship across the whole LGPS, and it's such strategic importance to us, there is a lot of executive oversight on the overall LGPS relationship, because it is something that's incredibly important to Northern Trust. So I'll pause there, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
How do you vote?
How's Latwa?
Right, thanks, Paul, for your presentation. It's very interesting. And I just wondered, does anyone have any questions for Paul on his presentation? Councillor Bush?
Paul, thank you. Just basically a quick educational point. So the investment manager is obviously the person who the entity goes in with in terms of their investments. Does the custodian then hold the assets on behalf of the investment manager?
So the assets will be in your name. You as the beneficial owner maintain the ownership of the assets. You just delegate your trading to the manager, whether that's London CIV or sorry, I don't know who, I can't think off the top of my head who else you're invested with, but the likes of BlackRock, for example. So yeah, so the assets are still held within your name on our records. Does that answer the question?
Right. Anyone else with any questions? No? Okay. All right, Paul, thank you very much for that. So we move on to the next
Pleasure.
statement.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Son gets the TV back now.
He'll be very excited. I was waiting for a question. What games are you going to play?
Do we have any other business on this section? I don't think there is any.
No.
And I think at this point the public can't. This next section of the meeting is exclusive to this panel and not the public. So